Hello, this is the fourth of the four-part series about Muzium Negara. This is Gallery D, Malaysia Today. Enjoy the vlog.
Everybody had this idea that it is not possible to overcome the British people. They are just too powerful. But considering what happened during World War II, the British people abandoning Penang, you see them as prisoners of war and all that, being overrun by all these, not very big size Japanese soldiers. People start to have to change their opinion and view of the superiority of the British people. After the war, also, a few countries around the area also declared independence. India, Indonesia, Myanmar, So, and then people do read, there's all these newspaper reports and things like that. Because when the administrators was here, they also needed a civil servant, a civil service comprised of the locals to run the administration. So they were also educated. So as educated people, you also read about all these things that is happening. So, but the impetus to initiate change still wasn't there yet. Awareness was already very high, but the one event that sort of pushed for action to be taken was the British decision to create the Malayan Union. So, Malayan Union was more or less the last straw that broke the camel back event. How that comes about is because before World War II, as the British administrator, how many governments were you communicating or negotiating with to plan the defenses of Malaya? At these three governments. Because don't forget, before World War II, there is three systems in place. You've got the straight settlement, that is one admin system. Federated Malay states, that was also another system, and the unfederated Malay states. You don't even talk about Borneo and Sabah, which is separate. So basically, you want to add all in is 5 different systems. So you can imagine how complicated or difficult it is to plan for things when you got to talk to 3 different parties. So they wanted to centralize the whole administration, and they called that plan the Malayan Union Plan. But of course, that plan, it involves taking away a lot of privileges and rights of the rulers, making easy citizenship to the immigrant races, the Chinese, the Indians. So that's why there's a lot of protests. So although this was initiated, but it was not enforced until they came up with the next plan, which is the Federation of Malaya Plan. So when the Federation of Malaya Plan was initiated, it was better received by the rulers. But unfortunately, now it was the other people who didn't want it because it became much more difficult to get your citizenship. And so there was actually a lot of objection to this plan. But it was all ignored, and this Federation of Malaya Plan was endorsed and executed in 1948. So that sort of caused a group of people to fight against the British, which is the Communist Party. So when this war took place, it created a Malayan emergency. Now, why was the whole event? People were dying, things were destroyed. It is practically a war. Why do they call it an emergency and not a war? Because if you call it a war, you cannot claim insurance. In insurance is not claimable during times ago. But if you call it an emergency, you can claim insurance. So because of that, that is why the whole fighting effort against the communists is never headed by the army. It is headed by the police and supported by the army, which is different from other countries. During this period of time, there was a lot of changes introduced, identity card, new villages was created, and things like that. So the main culprits is, of course, the communists. So the communists, they are known also as Tiga Bintang, the 3 stars. You know how to say it in Cantonese, 3 stars? You don't know Cantonese. What's 3 in Cantonese?
Some
Star? Sing.
sing
You know,
Sing, sing,
Sing, sing. So if you join the two together,
3 sing,
in Cantonese,
something. Something is what? Something
that is why basically the oral history of how that terminology comes about, because these are considered really bullies, some things, because it actually refers to the 3 stars that they have. The 3 stars actually represents the 3 major races, but that's on their perspective. What my great-grandmother told me was, because when during this period of time they wanted support, they needed the food support, money support and all that. So they will come after the villagers living at the fringe and ask for donations and things like that. If you don't give, they will, threaten you. You give, now the British people will come and after you because you go and give down there. So very much the ordinary citizen was really, really caught in between these 2 giants. So that's why, why people call the 3 stars the somethings police and stuff like that. So
but this is after 1948.
It started
the
in
British
19
still there.
yes, this is when you see during the formation of Malaya in 1948 is the start of this emergency.
Agency.
And it ended in 1960. But 1960, it ended, it's just only part 1. The war didn't end. Because the war just shifted up north over to Thailand side. So they were now based in Thailand, but they still came over and attacked. Have you visited our national monument, Tugu Negara, before?
Yes.
If you have been there, it's now walled up, right?
Mm.
But before that, in the 1970s and all that, there is no wall on. You can just walk in. It's open. But in mid-1970s, the communists actually bombed that statue and broke it into a few parts.
Oh.
That's why after it was repaired, it's all walled up. So all this war still actually took place. And the war only officially ended in 1989 when the peace agreement was signed between the Malaysian government and the communist people. So, and Malaysia is the only country that has actually a signed peace agreement with the Communist Party. All other places is either the communists win or the war still continues, like what's happening in Korea in the south and what. But basically, the communists, like in Vietnam, is very much what Cambodia, Myanmar, all these countries that fought against the communists is all very much military-led, except Malaysia, which is led by the police, because they didn't want to disrupt the insurance claim.
The British made the decision.
Because even when BRICS comes in, BRICS is a general. So when he came in as a civilian because he doesn't want his army title to affect this civilian-led war with the communists. But of course, all this changed when Templar comes in. Gurney was murdered. Templar comes in. Okay, so when Templar comes in, he came in as a military person. Okay, he's no longer civilian already. Because I think at that point in time, they already changed the way they look at things. Part of it is also because you have to understand the whole thing from the British perspective. When Templar comes in, it is no longer the same government over on the British side. The earlier government was, I think, the Labour government. When Templar came in, Churchill was the new Prime Minister. But Churchill is conservative. So anyway, it's a different government. So that's why different government do things differently. So over on British side down there, it's actually a different government already. So that's one thing to take into
I
consideration.
thought Churchill was during the war.
Yes, but after that he resigned.
And then he came back
was not
again.
He was not the president. Clement Attlee was the new president, new prime minister. So it was during Clement Attlee's time when this whole emergency started. Then by the time it comes to Gurney, when he was
Murdered.
assassinated, Churchill, his party won the elections, and it was the new government then. To go to London to successfully ask for our independence. So the first place that he chose to announce the successful mission was in Malacca. So why Malacca?
I don't know.
This whole conquest thing, where did it start?
Malacca.
Exactly. So it was only appropriate that Malacca was chosen as the place to successfully announce that 18 months from now we are going to get our independence. But was it Tunku's idea? No, because if you look at this letter was written to Tunku before they left for London. And it comes from the Kuala Kangsar UMNO branch, which says that whether you are successful or not, please make the announcement in Malacca, because this is the place where the whole invasion process started, all the way from Malacca. Okay, so what flag do you think this is?
Malaysian flag?
Wrong.
No. Why?
Why? This is what year of celebration? 63rd or 64th, right?
57. 40, 63.
63 years old, okay.
Oh,
So-
64, 65 already. Oh, so long.
So, but when we celebrate Malaysia Days, how many birthday cakes do we put on it? How many birthday candles do we put on the birthday cake for when we celebrate Malaysia? Okay.
Minus 19,
Is it
2020.
the same as the independence?
No, different, 63.
It'll be less, right? It's only 50 over candles, right? Because a lot of people don't realize that independence is not the same as Malaysia Day. It's actually two separate events. But the way we sort of truncate our knowledge is that we always lump the two things together. We think that independence is the same, Malaysia is the same. Whereas Malaysia was formed only in 1963. So when we talk about the celebration of Independence Day on 21st August, it is only independence of Peninsular Malaysia or
West Malaysia.
West Malaysia. That's why like Sarawak has its own Independence Day celebration on 22nd July, because that was the day when they actually got their independence. Sabah was 31st August when they become part of Malaysia. So most people don't realize that. So in fact, it was not created when we had Independence Day in 1957. That flag was already in existence, but at that time it's actually called the Federation of Malaya flag. And that was the country that was born in 31st August 1957. But when the different parts of major entities join together, we take the birthday or the independence day of the biggest entity. So that's why we celebrate 31st August. But most people don't realize that it's not consciously at the top. So Malaysia Day was formed then, and when Malaysia was formed, around the region, Indonesia protested. There was this confrontation that was taking place. Now, confrontation was a fight between Malaysia and Indonesia. And most people don't realize it, but when the communist war officially ended in Peninsular Malaysia, the communist fight in Sarawak was just starting. In fact, it started just before the confrontation took place. So that's why what happens with the communists is different in Peninsula and also in Sabah and Sarawak. And the communist fight with the over in Sabah and Sarawak is also closely related to the confrontation. Most people do not realize it, but in fact, a lot of all these activities is related to this fear of communists. The Korean War, Vietnam War, formation of Malaysia, because Abdul Rahman wanted a bigger entity to face the communist threat. Confrontation, the Communist Party in Sabah and Sarawak actually had a lot of support from Indonesia. Why? It's because not many people realize it, but do you know which is the third largest communist party located?
Russia.
It's in Indonesia. China, Russia is the first largest and second largest communist party. But Indonesia had the third largest communist party at that point in time. And why this crisis takes place is because of this close relationship between the PKI, the Party Communist Indonesia, and Sukarno, the first Prime Minister. Because Sukarno was friendly, I would say supporter, but he was very friendly with the communists. So a lot of all this friendliness actually caused a lot of concern to a lot of people, and that's why also there was support given to this Sarawak Communist Party, because they can rely on the Communist Party in Indonesia to give a little bit of support and assistance in the fight against the British over the Sarawak. But eventually Suharto managed to, there was a coup and Suharto took over. And if you talk about communist fight, in Malaya, we say that 500,000 people was moved to the new villages. It seems like such a terrible thing, moving house. You are lucky you are not in Indonesia, because over in Indonesia, 500,000 to 3 million people, communist people, are said to be killed because of this communist relationship thing. So if you say you have it bad here, other countries is even worse. Because that was the number. That's why communist is actually a very sensitive subject in Indonesia, because they really clamp down on this topic. And because the amount of people that was killed during that time varies, range from 500,000 to almost 3 million people was killed during that time. So the other country to protest was, of course, of Philippines or Sabah, and then Singapore was supposed to join, but they didn't, symbolize our country. So when our national flower, so in school we always say that the national flower was selected because the 5 petals, it coincides with the 5 principles that we have, the Rukun Negara. But actually this is wrong. Okay? So if we look at the date when the Rukun Negara was made, it was declared in 1970. Okay, so it was in 19. But let's look at the date when the national flower was selected.
In 1960.
So the flower was selected way much earlier than when the 5 principles was selected. But we always say that, oh, this was selected because got 5 Rukun Negara. So you see how sometimes this information or the way we think
Confused.
can get a little bit distorted simply because people don't look at the way the chronology of things are created. They just choose to say, oh, this happens to be 5 and then 5, and then people always confuse people by saying things like that. So sometimes it's important that we do fact checking, especially the dates when things are created. Then you will realize that what he's saying is not quite true. And the other thing to remember, be highly aware of, is the different ethnic groups that we have. So in a lot of major general literature, we say that Malaysia is represented by the 3 major races. But you and I know that there are so many sub-ethnic groups within the 3 major races. Chinese, you have got the Hokkiens, the Teochews, the Cantonese, the Hakkas. And each one in the early days was very much playing a major role in the different niches. The Hokkiens was very much traders, businessmen. The Hakkas was very much into the hard work, tin mining, stuff like that. Teochews was in other things. Maybe the craftsmen and things like that. The Hainanese was very much into the food industries because they were also the last ethnic groups to come inside here. So by the time when they came in, all the major industries was already well taken up by the other major groups. So when they came here, they didn't know what to do. So they went into the food. So that's why there's a lot of Hainan kopitiam. That's where they went. The Indians, you have got the Malayalis, the Tamils, and so many other different groups. So certain groups are better at business, certain groups are better as trades, craftsmen, building temples and things like that. Some are very much into the rubber, the hard labors and stuff like that. Even the Malays themselves, there are so many different groups. People from Kampar, Minangkabau, Bugis, Javanese and things like that. Collectively, you know them as Malay, but each one of them have their own cultural differences. So that's why you see what the southern Malays do is different from the East Coast, is different from the northern and all that. So you don't look at them as just, oh, they're Malays, but there are actually a lot of differences. Food, they have different interests, So that's something to be read. I mean, you're not even talking about the East Malaysia one, which has got so many different ethnic groups. So it's actually very diverse. And then on top of it, don't forget you got the mixed groups. the earlier ones that I was telling you about, the Chiti, the Indians, the
Babayonia.
Hindus mixed with the local Malays. So they are not the Chitis. Then you also got the Chinese community, the Eurasians, and all this. So it's actually a very, very
Diverse.
diverse. But for ease of administration, we just classify it down to three major groups. Maybe because during the colonial time you don't have computers, it's so difficult to have so many classification. So you just classify as three major things, when in actual fact there are so many different things. And that you will realize during Chinese New Year, that thing. But it was very much, but not everybody Chinese practice that, like the Hokkiens or whatever, the older folks, they don't do that because they feel that it's very much a Cantonese creation. So the other ethnic groups do not actually practice that. But the modern Chinese who don't know about it thinks that it's a Chinese thing, so they will just adopt it. Whereas the more traditionally, more aware ones will not do it because it's not theirs.
1989.
Yes,
So long.
October 89.
Oh.
The real fighting was probably earlier, but the official one was, the official signing ceremony was in 89. Yeah.
There wasn't really serious fighting, right?
Compared to Malaya, no lah. Compared to Malaya,
It's
no.
like little bit like that.
Yeah. Compared to Malaya, not as terrible. I mean, for the people who are involved in it, it's terrible. Temporary exhibition galleries, Gallery 1 and 2 down there. Then there's also the Orang Asli Museum near the car park area and the Malay ethnic group down there. So this place has a lot more other places besides the 4 main galleries that you see here. So you can spend the whole day here visiting the other places.
Thank you very much.
This is the last of the 4-part series, the 4-vlog series about Muzium Negara, galleries A to D. Thank you for watching. If you haven't watched the vlogs of galleries A to C, please go and watch them. Thank you so much. Please click the like button, share and subscribe. Thank you. See you.